Biff Podcast, Episode 26. The Story of Biff. Part 1, 1995 to 1997. The beginning of Biff is the story of Elysium. In the fall of 1995, my parents gave me a guitar for my 14th birthday. It was a black Fender Stratocaster, a Squier edition for beginners. By Christmas, my best friend Joe had received a drum set, and we were on our way to starting our first band. Never mind the fact that neither of us knew how to play. That was a minor detail that we would work out as we went along. We both took guitar and drum lessons from the same guy, a burnout, drug-fried 60s leftover. He was great. Our band was called Elysium, a Greek word I found while flipping through the dictionary. It basically translates to mean heaven. Note, incidentally, we, like virtually all teens at the time, were huge fans of Nirvana. Later that spring, while attending the second half of our 8th grade year, we met Corey Jensen. Corey had been playing guitar for much of his childhood and was very interested in joining our band. Even though his mother initially said no, within a few weeks she was dropping him off at our practice. Corey and I alternated playing bass and guitar, and he quickly picked up the songs that Joe and I had already written. Within a couple of months, we had produced a full-length album featuring 10 original songs. Our primitive recording process consisted of placing a boombox tape recorder in a trash can down the hall from our basement practice space.
Back in Roman ancient times, if your rank was high, you'd be granted special privileges. If you were a
Later, I dubbed vocals on it using my karaoke machine. This shamefully low-fidelity release was distributed to many of our classmates at Parker Vista Middle School. As a result, we were blacklisted from the local music scene for many years to come. Shortly after beginning high school, we found a new friend and bass player, Sean O'Toole. Things were going well for the band for about 8 months when a strange thing happened. Joe, in a courageous act, simultaneously quit and was kicked out of Elysium. We were less than pleased with Joe as a drummer. He was unhappy as a drummer and far more interested in playing bass. All the while, I had begun playing drums and was very interested in the prospect of becoming the Elysium drummer. And so in the late spring of 1997, a 4-piece became a 3-piece, and Joe found himself without a band. Part 2, Summer 1997, Biff, a pity band. In the early summer of 1997, Corey and I felt so sorry for our bandless friend Joe that we decided to extend a helping hand to our brother in need. And so, it was out of sheer pity that Biff was founded. It was decided I would resume my role as the singer-guitarist. Joe would be able to continue to explore his newfound talents on the bass, and Corey would do his best to keep simple beats on Joe's old drum set. We were originally called the Psychedelic Metal Muffins. It was just something that one of us had heard somewhere and we liked the sound of it. Note that none of us had ever used any kind of psychedelic drugs, and I for one had no idea what the term even meant. We rehearsed as often as we could over that summer, creating Biff classics such as Cornus Jensenus, Choose Your Beast, and the Screaming Song. We played our first show for a group of friends in Joe's front yard on September 8th, 1997. His parents were away in Hawaii. Part 3, Biff becomes Biff. Later that year, an epiphany struck me as I was enjoying a rewatching of one of my favorite science fiction adventure movies, Back to the Future. We should call our band Biff. I knew it was perfect because we sucked. We biffed all the time. The whole thing really felt like a joke anyway. So it seemed like the best possible name for us. After gaining approval from my bandmates, we were known from that day forward only as Biff. It is conceivable that our name has always lent itself to our mission, purpose, and essence more so than most bands. Being called Biff has allowed us to be silly. It enabled us to write humorous songs while performing comedic sketches. Our name also allowed us to push the limits and stretch the boundaries. We were allowed to make mistakes and to be ourselves. Outcasts, nobodies, rejects, and proud of it. It was a powerful identity that we wore well, then and now. Part 4. 1998 to 1999. Biff in the late 90s. Over the next several years, we played a decent amount of shows around our hometown. We soon became known for our outlandish screaming and ridiculous onstage antics. We released another poorly produced lo-fi demo entitled The Biff Experience, which is featured on Biffcast number 17. In the fall of 1999, after spending my summer savings on a Yamaha MD 8-track recorder, Biff produced our first digitally recorded full-length album, Biff-O-Rama. It was a big deal at the time. It was the first time that we had ever distributed our music on compact disc. We really thought it sounded amazing. It didn't, nevertheless. The album was fairly popular among our high school peers for its vulgarity, inappropriate bathroom humor, and unabashed references to our classmate Bignonetta, who was notoriously angry. Part 5. 1999, Corey quits the band. Soon after the release of Biff-O-Rama, Corey decided he wanted out. It seemed to us like he was embarrassed to be affiliated with the band. He was shy about distributing our album and reluctant to play shows. The final straw for Corey came when I went against his wishes and booked the band at our high school's talent show, also known as Club PHS. He showed up to the gig with somewhat of a protest sign that he proudly displayed on the front of his kick drum. It read, "Biff sucks, I quit." This was the last time Corey ever performed with Biff on the drums. Part 6, 1999 to 2000. Ladies and gentlemen, Mouse. It's amazing how the universe works sometimes. Within days of Corey quitting the band, Joe had already found us a new drummer. Matt Alver just happened to share a class with Joe. Having heard of Corey's recent departure, Mr. Alver expressed interest in filling his shoes. For some reason, Matt was impressed with our Biff-O-Rama release, and we were blown away by him. With our new, very talented drummer, we were headed for bigger, better things. Part 7, the Biffmas and President Biff era. Regrettably, Matt's first undertaking with his new band was to aid us in creating our infamous Biffmas album.
Yeah, you know Christmas time is here. Oh yeah, it's time of the year.
In December of 1999, we gathered in my parents' basement to construct an audacious collection of sexually defaced Christmas songs and holiday-themed comedy sketches. A few track titles included Pubes for Christmas, Rudolph the Fat-Ass Reindeer, and Deck the Balls. During the recording of the 12 Days of Biffmas, we were interrupted by my mother, understandably upset, who said, "David, the language!" We were then informed that we would have to finish our recording session out in the garage. The album, like Bifforama, was wildly popular with our peers at school, again due to the sheer vulgarity of it all.
Rudolph the fat-ass reindeer had a very fat ass. And if you ever saw
If anything ever put Biff on the map, it was Biffmas. Looking back now, years later, I am filled with strangely mixed feelings of shame and nostalgia in regards to the Biffmas. The truth is, we had a lot of fun making that album. Around the same time, we were also very busy writing new songs for what later became the President Biff album, which was recorded in January of the year 2000. This was a major turning point for the band, and what I could only describe as the Biff sound. The President Biff album showcased this new sound for Biff. The addition of Matt's intricate drumming brought new and exciting elements to our music. For the first time, we sounded like a real band. The songs were heavier, more sophisticated and complex, musically speaking. Matt was highly influenced by drummers like Tim Alexander, Brain, and Danny Carey. He was a wizard on the double bass pedal, and the most solid drummer I had had the privilege of playing with. I cite him now as a tremendous influence on me as the future Biff drummer. The album also featured more of the comedy sketches Biff had then become known for.
And now Biff will perform his finest ass solo.
Part 8, 2000 through 2002, ICBD, SBIP, and the disbanding of Biff. Joe and I graduated from high school in May of the year 2000. Biff played a lot of shows that summer as we worked on new material. It was around this time that we released a collection of recordings from our live shows known as Biff Live. In the fall of that same year, Matt headed back to school for his senior year. Joe was off to culinary college, and I was busy delivering pizzas. On a weekend in late October, we piled our gear into my mom's Ford Expedition and headed for Fort Collins, Colorado. A bunch of our friends had moved up there for school and had subsequently collected enough recording gear to open a studio in their basement. We rolled into town with the intentions of recording an EP, which was to be the inaugural release of our fledgling independent record label, New Noise Records. We were ripe with anticipation as we believed that this would be the best-sounding Biff album to date. It wasn't, at least not at first. Due to technical difficulties with computer equipment and recording gear, we ended up using the same portable mini-disc 8-track unit we had used to produce our previous albums. Only this time around, Matt would use his exceptional computer skills to mix the album digitally. By March of 2001, we had released our fourth studio album, ICBD. We played a handful of shows that summer in support of the album. Not much else went on for us that year besides writing and rehearsing for our next album, SBIP. 2002 was a rough year for Biff that would ultimately see our demise. The recording of our fifth album was tedious and trying. Differences in opinion on a number of topics led to disagreements and tension in the band. Many unfruitful trips to Fort Collins left a bad taste in our mouths. Still, we pressed on. Unfortunately, though, by the time the album was finished, so were we. Incidentally, this would not be the primary reason for Biff parting ways. We broke up towards the end of the summer in 2002, pragmatically enough because Joe had decided he was moving with a friend to Arizona. Matt and I then, rather quickly, formed a new band called Apsis, which featured Corey Jensen as our singer. Despite the fact that Joe did not end up moving, he was once again without a band. Only this time, we obviously felt much less sorry for him. Part 9, 2002 through 2006, the Biffless years. Biff endured a lengthy hiatus spanning nearly 4 years. During this time, Matt, Corey, and I enjoyed rocking out in our hard prog rock band Apsis, along with our lovely and talented bass player Rita Schilleriff. A few years down the road in 2005, I became involved with a side project with a couple of my buddies from my job at Papa John's. We called ourselves the Worrymen. We were primarily a punk rock band with some reggae influences. This band featured myself on the drums, John Fraley playing guitar, Seth Yannicone on bass, and Laurel Buckles on vocals. In fact, we all took turns singing. This too was a very fun band to have been a part of, and I'm proud of the albums we produced in the few years that we were together. Most importantly, for Biff's sake, playing with the Worrymen got me well acquainted with Seth. Part 9, 2006, the world needed Biff. In the years that followed our breakup, Biff had quickly become my own personal goldmine of nostalgia. I loved being in the band. I loved our music. I loved who we were and what we were all about. Most of all, I missed it desperately, and I often found myself in various states of reminiscent longing for the good old days of Biff. At the time, I was living with some friends in a house, and we had ample recording gear at my disposal. I was constantly writing and recording demo songs, and it's no surprise that some of them started sounding a lot like Biff. As soon as I got the idea for a Biff Returns album, I called up my old pal Joe. To my delight, Joe seemed more than willing to lend his bass-playing skills for my preconceived reunion album. We soon went to work creating a plethora of new Biff material. Things were going great, but I soon realized that it wouldn't be the same without our former drummers. After informing Matt and Corey of our project, they both agreed to make cameo appearances on the album. When we first set out to make this album, I had no intentions of actually getting the band back together, but that is exactly what happened next. Part 10, 2006 through 2007, Biff, once again, a pity band. Sometime in mid-2006, the Worrymen called it quits. This had been Seth's first real band, and he really took the breakup pretty hard. And yes, I felt sorry for him. All the pieces for our reformation had fallen into place. Seth needed a new band. Seth was a fan of Biff. I wanted to reform Biff. Joe was down to play again, and so it was. Biff was back. We went to work teaching Seth how to play classic Biff songs on guitar, as I labored to work out the monumental task of playing Matt's drum beats while singing. It was slow at first, but soon enough we were not only sounding like the old Biff, but we were also writing a ton of new stuff as well. On December 4th, 2006, we played our first show as a reunited band at the Larimer Lounge in Denver. The next year, 2007, would see the release of Biff of Duty. We also played a ton of shows that year. Part 11, 2008 through 2009, more music, videos, and podcasts. In the years that followed our reassembling, Biff once again became a prolific and unstoppable creative force. In 2008, we released FFIB, also known as Fib, our 9th studio album, along with Re-Biff, a reproduced, re-recorded collection of classic Biff songs. Also that year, as technology and finances permitted, I purchased new video cameras and we began producing music videos and a web series entitled Biff Studio Diaries.
Stars Biff are gearing up to record yet another studio album. Today, they are making their way to visit their manager, Ashley Delarue, for an impromptu meeting to check up on the band's progress.
It was an exciting time to be interested in video production as I was. As it was the first time in history, thanks to the internet, that we could share our videos with a much larger audience. It was around this time that I also began producing the Biff Podcast, which were originally meant to serve as a forum for Biff news and information. It later evolved into yet another way to document our experience and history in the band.
I'm Dave.
I'm Seth.
This is a fucking podcast. Kiss my ass.
That's Joe.
Hey, everybody.
In the late spring of 2009, we released our EP, You've Been Biffed, which has long been a band favorite. By the end of 2009, we had transitioned to a new rehearsal space and subsequently lost our basement recording studio. But this did not stop us from producing new albums. No, sir. It should also be noted that during these years between 2008 and 2009, Seth and I started an additional side project known as Remember the Radio, which featured our friend from the Worrymen, John Fraley. Part 12, 2010 through the present day, 5 Minutes with Biff, and beyond. By 2010, I was very busy managing grad school, 2 bands, and a full-time job. Biff was focused on writing and recording songs for our Biff or Die album, but it wouldn't be released until the following year, and much to my chagrin, as well as Seth and Joe, the mixing on that album would be ongoing for years to come. During this period, we were also occupied with producing another web series entitled 5 Minutes with Biff, a mockumentary, sitcom-style slice of life of Biff. These were 5-minute-long episodes, many of which were inspired by true events. The show was meant to show an exaggerated version of ourselves, the dynamics between us, and the struggles we face within the band. The filming of each episode was usually like pulling teeth, as it was very tedious and time-consuming. Over 15 years into it, Biff is still going strong today. We continue to practice regularly, write new songs, record new albums, produce videos, and play shows. Our history is ongoing, and we invite you to check back for many updates as they occur. For the Biff Podcast, this is Dave. Thanks for listening.